It is Monday, that's right, Monday, February 5th, and I'm calling the meeting of Personnel Affairs, Administrative Affairs Committee to order. The time is 7 p.m., and we are in the Aldermanic Chamber. We actually have to start off by our election of the roll of clerk, or I can call roll. I think I have to do my clerk. I'll call
You can
it.
appoint a temporary clerk as well.
I'm a temporary clerk. I'm going to call it, and then we'll do it. Okay, ready?
I love it.
I am here. Alderman Clemmons.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Lopez. Alderman Senate.
Here.
Great, we have quorum. We also have in attendance Mayor Jim Donchis. And now we are on to the election of a clerk. Oh, I'm sorry, and Alderman Clee is here. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I would move to nominate Tim Sennett to serve as committee clerk for the 2024-2025 term.
All right, the motion is to nominate Mr. Sennett. Do we want to close nominations?
I would move to close nominations.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Do we need to then, it says a third?
Yes.
Okay, then we also need to vote on Alderman Sennett
Yep.
as our clerk for the 2025 term.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And anyone opposed? Fumbled through that.
Congratulations.
Now I'll jump up.
Sorry. I didn't realize we had to take
I
3
know.
actions to get a clerk. That's a lot. Okay. Come on up. Thank you. As my new clerk gets settled, we will look for public comments. Doesn't look like there's any public. I'll let you get seated. We are.
Not.
Probably not. Now we are, right?
You can get it from the camera, hopefully.
Yep, it's on now. You can tell how long it's been since I clicked. Okay. All right, we are at communications.
All right. Interviews. Downtown Improvement Committee, Fuad Mahfouz, 227 Main Street, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03060, for a term to expire November 2nd, 2026.
All right. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I am nominating Fu Mahfouz as for the Downtown Improvement Committee. Fu, of course, owns PRG Rugs right next door. It's a third-generation Nashua business, a very prominent retailer in downtown Nashua. He has previously served in a lot of different capacities in community service in Nashua. Among those were the Board of Directors of the Chamber of Commerce, the Board of Directors of Great American Downtown. I see from his resume he's also a man of many talents. He's a film producer. Now, he has not exhibited, as far as I know, that skill in Nashua so far, but we're hoping to, maybe he will.
Just on Instagram for my store, and that's about it.
We need retailers on the Downtown Improvement Committee. One of our goals in introducing downtown housing is not only to provide housing in general, but also to create a better base for retailers in downtown. So his input, his contribution to the Downtown Improvement Committee will, I believe, really help the city. And so I will turn it over to Fu and ask him to add a little bit more about himself and why he is interested in serving on the Downtown Improvement Committee.
Well, you almost said it all, I think. I've been back in Nashua for about 18 years now. I had gone away and done my college and different things before and got back into my family's business, and now my dad is fully retired. I purchased the company, it'll be 3 years ago in April. So right now I serve on the board of directors of the Boys and Girls Club, but I've been a long-serving board member there, so I have kind of kept my options a little open lately, and I was talking to Mary Lou Blaisdell, and she has been trying to get me on the committee for a while, so I thought it was a good time, and I guess there was need, so I said, why not? I like the people on the committee, and I've My dad served on it for a long time, so I thought it'd be a good addition for us, so.
Thank you. Okay, I'll open up to questions from the committee. Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. No questions. I think you're extremely qualified
Thank you.
for this position. I served on the committee as both liaison and a member of the committee with your father for a long time, and I know that you'll carry on his great reputation forward. So I look forward to supporting
Thank you. Thanks.
Other committee members, Alderman Jettie.
Thank you. So, you say you've been back in Nashua 18 years. Has it been 18 years since you
Well,
lived
I've
in that condo in Lowell?
No, I shouldn't say that. I've been in the business for 18 years, but I've been living in Nashua now for 8 years, I think. So, yeah, almost 8 years, yep. So Lowell was before that, yeah. But I can't believe it's been 18 years that I've been back working in the family business, so,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for being willing to step forward. And, I'm sure you're going to do a great job, as your father did before you. And I know that your family has a big interest in Nashua, and I'm sure that you will fulfill that with great vigor.
Thank you.
But thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderman Senate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, thank you for putting your name forward and volunteering for this committee. Like Alderman Clemmons, I had the opportunity to sit on this committee for about 2 years, so it's good to see more of the business community involved. For the sake of not letting you escape without
Okay.
at least a softball question, I want to throw one your way that was thrown my way when I was in that seat, which is, as a longtime, downtown business owner,
Yep.
family member, if you could see one new type of business come down to Main Street, what would you like to see?
Wow, that is a really good one. I guess the one that a lot of people talk about, but being a business owner downtown, I know how challenging it might be to do it, but I'd love a bookstore or some sort of media type store downtown. They have a couple in Concord, and they have the Bookery in Manchester, which I love, and so yeah. And I spent some time in Maine this summer and in Brunswick, and they have great bookstores and little stores in their downtown. So I just think with the housing situation changing downtown, I hope someday that would be something we could have also. So,
Awesome. Thank you so much for your
You're
willingness
welcome.
to serve.
yeah.
Thank you so much for coming forward, and now I want a record store, bookstore downtown.
Yeah, records and books, both of them.
I love that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm very knowledgeable of you and your family, and I know that you guys do an incredible amount for the downtown and just Nashua in general. So
Thank you.
I'm grateful to have you stepping forward for this, and I will be supporting that. I didn't know that you went to film school. How
Yeah.
have we not talked about that?
I don't know why I never told you. It was, in my past, and I don't really do much of it anymore. So, but that was how my friend Grant, Grant, and I got connected too, because I knew that's what he did. So that's kind of what got us together. So,
Huh.
yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your willingness to serve. We'll
No
be
problem.
taking up your nomination in a bit.
Cool.
I think we have one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman
Yeah.
Clee. Everyone's on my left side.
I know, it's hard when you're over there, believe it or not, the
Yeah,
computer's in
screen
your
is in
way,
the
I
way, it
agree,
does.
I understand that completely. Actually, I don't have a question about this, but in reading your resume and what Alderwoman Kelly just brought up, just to kind of put a bug in, the Nashua Theater Guild is looking for directors.
Oh, okay.
They're desperately
All right.
looking, they've got a plea out there that they're
All
looking
right.
for a director, so.
Well, my
if you're
sister,
interested in any way.
my sister's more the theater person, so I'll tell her. I'll let her know. 'Cause,
I just thought I'd get that plug in there.
thank you. Yeah, that's good
Thank
to
you.
know.
Alderman Clemmons.
So I do have a solid question for you, because this is something that I think the committee might be tasked with, maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
What are your thoughts of a true business improvement district? So instead of the parking revenue
Mhm.
that funds the the committee, but actually, instead of that, having an actual tax on top of what you would pay for property taxes.
I'm not really sure. I'd have to learn more about it, definitely, to have an opinion. I'm not against taxing businesses if it's appropriate, but it is a word that people are afraid of, especially business people. So, you know, to bring up the film industry, one way to get movies to come to your town is to give them tax breaks. So, so I'm not sure. I'd have to know the specifics and dive into it, but I'm not necessarily against it. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's good to hear, because I think, you know, going forward, I think that the parking revenue was sort of like when that committee came up, was designed was sort of a way to get around doing that. But I think we're at a point where there are some priorities shifting there, and so I think it's a discussion that the committee should at least have and think about, and we should get some numbers over to the committee as well, because I don't think ultimately it would be that expensive on
Yeah.
top of that, especially if you back into the number. So if you figure out, okay, this is how much I want every year, you can divide that by the number of properties and
Yep.
and back into that number. So, but I'm glad to see that you have an open mind to that. So
Yeah, the
thank you.
priority would be to get businesses to feel comfortable to move
Right.
here operate in the downtown with all of the sort of challenges that we face in a downtown, which every downtown faces. So
Correct. Yep.
that would be my motivation, would be if I had the opportunity to let businesses know that you can have a thriving business downtown, even if you don't have more than one or two parking spaces or none, or, you know, all the things that we hear all the time, I think are valid, but there are great businesses downtown that do well because of the downtown, so, yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
All set? All right.
All right, I'm all good. All right, thank you.
Next up for Historic District Commission, Annalisa Law, 78 Concord Street, for a term to expire January 31st, 2027.
Madam Chair, I'm nominating Lisa Law to the Historic District Commission. I'm sure you all know the Law family very well. Lisa is chair of the Law Family Council, which governs the family business, which has been in the city for 6 generations. Her family previously, this is kind of an interesting fact, I think this is accurate, previously owned the Temple ski area over in Temple. Maybe started that?
My grandfather and grandmother started it in 1937.
And I remember skiing there with my daughter when she was small, so that was a really nice memory. But Lisa now serves on the Board of Directors of New Hampshire Public Television, is the secretary of the New Hampshire Justice of the Peace Association. She is a published author, is a television producer, and has a show on WSMN, and lives in the Historic District in the Judge Hoyt House on Concord Street, which is a marvelously, beautifully preserved historic house, and Lisa has expressed an interest, which I'm very glad she has, in serving on the Historic District Commission, and therefore I'm very happy to nominate her, and I'm sure she will make a great contribution. But I will turn to Lisa and ask that she tell us a little about herself to the extent that's necessary, and of her interest in serving on the commission.
So thank you for the opportunity. So I grew up in Peterborough. My grandparents started the ski area, and when my parents got married in the 60s, they built a house halfway up the ski mountain, and I grew up slope side. I could ski out my front door down to the mountain every day. And in 1984, we sold the ski area and moved next door to my grandparents, and Brian's parents had bought a piece of land from my grandparents, so I moved across the street from Brian when I was 16. I went to Wellesley College, graduated with a degree in psychology. I came home and worked in broadcasting back to Nashua in 1990. and worked for 10 years in broadcasting, then was home with my kids. We bought our house on Concord Street in 2001? 2000. We'd lived at Kessler Farm prior to that. And then I worked as a realtor for almost 10 years, and I transitioned into interior design, home staging, color consulting, and feng shui, and did that for about 10 years. And then recently I opened a wedding chapel here in Nashua, and I'm a justice of the peace where I host elopements and micro weddings. And recently you all might be aware that Brian's property at Airport Road's being developed. I was involved with the design of that, and it was a really interesting project to modernize that whole area, but stay within the master plan of Nashua, and so that was a really good experience of being involved in that. And so I want to be on the Historic Commission. I live in a historic house. I understand the quirkiness of living in a house and wanting to honor and be a steward of its history, but also having it be modernized so that it's comfortable. And I also understand everything is custom in our homes, and so anything that this committee asks people to do is extremely expensive. So I'm conscious of that too, how to ask things that are reasonable and within keeping of the history of the home, but also allowing people to modernize it too so that they can live there and it's not burdensome for them to live there. So I think I can really strike that balance of understanding the pressures, but also understanding people wanting their homes to function well. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Questions? Alderman Cleat?
Thank you, Madam President. And Lisa, thank you for stepping up for this. Your family, Brian and you specifically, have been very good to the city, and you've been good stewards of the property and so on. I liked what you had said. I've been the liaison to the Historic District since I was voted in as alderman, and I agree with everything that you said. Sometimes people come and say, I need to put these windows in, but if I did the exact historic, it's going to be too costly and I can't do it, and I'm going to end up with these windows that are going to be falling out and so on. The Historic District Commission has been leaning towards, while sometimes they grid materials that they would prefer not to be there, so different kinds of siding and so on. So I'm glad to see that you're going to bring that feel to it. I believe almost everybody on the commission is from the Historic District, so they're gonna each have their own take on it, but I feel like you're going to speak more for the average person and not just the person who wants to do that. So thank you for stepping up and doing that. It is a difficult, this year I'm the alternate to the committee. Alderman Tebow is the actual liaison to it, but I'll be at those meetings too. Thank you for stepping. You said you designed the Amherst Street property. And
No, I didn't design it.
You helped?
I gave input.
Input, okay.
Yeah.
So when you're on the committee, I guess my question is going to be, would you, sometimes I've noticed that some of the people, before they come to the committee, they reach out to some of the people, like the architect or something like that, to ask their input and advice so they can stay within that. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because then you have to vote on it. But are you willing to work with people to try to do things like that? I'm going to assume the answer would be
Sure.
yes, but I wanted to ask that.
Yeah, I feel like when we can work together for compromises that fits everybody's needs. I think, we want people to be happy living there, and but also, be respectful and mindful of Nashua's history and being good stewards.
Just one more comment.
And I
Alderman
wouldn't,
Cleave?
back to your point, I wouldn't overstep whatever boundaries are set by, I don't think it's appropriate for me to be calling up an architect and getting in the middle of design decisions like that. If I'm asked my opinion, I'll weigh in, but I can't foresee myself overstepping any boundaries that would make anyone uncomfortable.
I don't think any member has done that, but once in a while, a resident has reached out to one of the board members to ask them, how do you think this will go through? I guess my next comment is, The commission only oversees the outside and what can be seen from the street. So recently, we had a house that wanted to put up a fence that kind of protected, they wanted to do something with inside the yard. So we had to work with them to make the fence and so on, window siding, whatever you, I always tell people, if you've got the house and made a complete open concept, there's nothing the historic district can do with that. So I just wanted to kind of make sure we get that very clear to the public that's listening. We don't go into people's homes and say, you have to have this kind of pillars or something to that nature, so. But thank you
Sure.
for, your property always looks very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Alderman Clemmons and Alderman Jennings.
Thank you. I just want to thank you very much for coming forward. I think you'll be an excellent addition to the commission, and I am looking forward to supporting you, so.
Thank you.
Alderman Jettie?
Thank you. So, hearing Alderwoman Klee speak, I guess, I have a slightly different point of view, and it may not be inconsistent. We may be saying the same thing, but I have to admit, I'm not exactly sure, what the rules and the laws that govern the Historic District Commission, but I know that it's a land use commission. It's created by state statute. My general impression is that its purpose is to, preserve, the exterior look of buildings in the historic district, and, primarily to preserve the history of Nashua, and the district, was chosen because it has old buildings in it, and the idea is to preserve those old buildings, and one of the difficulties of having the job of being on a land use board is that you're governed by the law, and you're making judgments about whether people are obeying the law or not. It's not a popularity contest.
Are you afraid I'm not going to be able to make a tough decision? Is that?
Well, I just want to make sure that you're willing to say no, because, there are some people who have served on boards, like the Zoning Board of Adjustment, who find it very, very difficult to say no to people. When somebody, and I'm not saying there's anything nefarious about the people who come before these boards, and very good, well-meaning people, want to do something to their property, and they have very good reasons for wanting to do it, but it violates the law, and like in the zoning board, they're seeking a variance, and there are very strict rules about what qualifies for a variance. And, oftentimes, people just, have difficulty turning people down. And I just, want to hear from you that you're willing to make that tough decision if it's necessary.
Yeah, I think part of my place in the neighborhood, I think people do respect me. So if I say no to something, I think it's going to have weight and teeth. And I have no interest in not having people adhere to the codes. I'll give an example. Well, I don't want to say it on record, but there have been some things in our neighborhood that have happened that I would have said no to. And I can assure you that it'll be a case-to-case basis, but I believe in preserving the neighborhood, and I understand my role in having to say no to people if that's what's fitting the code and that's what's best for the neighborhood.
Okay, and you can always blame it on the law.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm glad that Alderman Jettie brought up the points that he brought up. I'm sure that you can say no. I mentioned that almost all the committee members, I think probably all the committee members are part of live within the historic district. There was one instance when one of the members was walking around, much like you do yourself, walk around the neighborhood and you see things and they said, wait a minute here, these windows have been removed from this building, and brought it forward. You know, as a committee member, you learn what can and what cannot do. So we put a cease and desist on that particular property until they came in front of the board and discussed it and so on. One of the times that we do switch around the material because of cost and because sometimes you can't get specific material that might have been, as much as everybody hates the word vinyl, there are times when the windows, that they have allowed for vinyl windows as long as they meet the intent of what the original window had to be.
Yep.
And so on. The different decorative type of moldings and so on the outside of the house, they do the best to try to get that, but you can't always get those same materials. So that's, I think, I'm hoping that when you said that you want to look to help people when necessary, that was kind of what you meant, and not that you would say, don't worry, you don't have to put in any kind of historical looking window. You did mean that alternative materials, as long as they met the criteria, would be okay.
Correct.
Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, I'm not going to let people put shoddy windows in and have it not fit the character of the neighborhood.
May I just follow up real quickly?
Alderman Clee?
Recently, we had a case that came before the historic district. The new owner wanted to do everything right. They wanted to make some adjustments to the house. But as we looked at the house, we realized a lot of adjustments have been made to that house that never came in front of the board. That made it really difficult. We're saying, okay, you're taking this portion of the house and you're going to make it and bring it to the historical, but then there's these other portions of it. No one even noticed that had been happening through the years. It's a house not too far down from where you live, but no one was even noticing any of these things were happening because it was so on. You would be willing to, if you saw something like that, just much like I said about the previous house that we had to put a cease and desist, come forward. You mentioned that sometimes you might not like the decisions that have been made, but you'd be willing to come forward and it's kind of squealing on your neighbors is kind of the point I'm trying to make. If something like that happened, you would have no issue with that.
Correct.
Okay.
It's my understanding, and maybe I'm incorrect, that anything that needs a permit needs to go in front of the Historic Commission.
Not everybody gets the permit that they need. And the city, unless it's brought to their attention, we don't always know what happens inside someone's house. And sometimes people assume a permit has been given for even some of the outside. This particular one was outside. And we went and looked, and there were no permits pulled for a lot of the work that had been done, which kind of puts the commission between the rock and a hard place. It's like, we can't fix everything that had been done. So just giving you a heads up on something like that. But at least the new owners are trying to get things back in shape, which I'm very, very proud of them for doing something like that. So thank you.
Everyone else said?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks.
Sit. Go ahead and skip him.
Okay.
He's okay. Just make sure you don't read him the next sentence.
So we did
Just press this one. Don't read that one.
okay.
You can read the rest.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to move on to applicants to license hawkers, peddlers, itinerant vendors license.
There are none.
Appointments by the mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion to recommend the following reappointment to the Animal and Dog Park Advisory Committee, Kathy Abel, with a term to expire October 31st, 2026. I'll make a motion to recommend the following a new appointment to the Downtown Improvement Committee, Fuad Mahfouz, with a term to expire November 2nd, 2026. Motion to recommend the following new appointment to the Historic District Commission, Annalisa Law, with a term to expire January 31st, 2027. Motion to recommend the following to the Business and Industrial Development Authority, John Stabile, with a term to expire September 22nd, 2025. To recommend the following reappointment to the Conservation Commission, Carol Sarno, with a term to expire December 31st, 2026. And to recommend the following to the Zoning Board of Adjustment, Joshua Neely, from alternate to member, with a term to expire September 11th, 2024.
Great. So the motion is to recommend the appointments as follows. Do we have any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Congratulations. All right, unfinished business.
There is none.
New business resolutions.
There are none.
New business ordinances.
None.
Tabled in committee.
None.
There is no public. General discussion. I have a couple things in general discussion, but if anyone else from the committee wants to go first, I can go last. Alderman Clee, go ahead.
The board will not be meeting before, but I just wanted to send my sympathies to the Catus family for their recent loss. He was so beneficial to the city and to the downtown area and so on. I know I believe his services are this Saturday, so he was too young to leave this world, so my condolences to the Catus family.
Echoed here for sure. So for general discussion, one of the things that we've talked about in this committee is around reappointments and how we wanted to handle those. What we've done, just so everybody knows and open to discussion here, is that we're including resumes of even reappointments in the packet. So my request of you is to go through them, see if there's any questions. We also have a document that is, I will have Donna share with everybody, but it looks at all of the committees, what committees have potential upcoming appointments, so we can see those, and it also lists those members and how long they've been on that committee. So the way forward in my mind is that we can take a look. You guys get this packet early enough that you can look through it. If there's anyone on the reappointment list that you would like to have come in, then just go ahead and send me an email, and I'll make sure that that happens, so they get invited to the meeting. That goes for the full board as well. I'll make sure that they have the same conversation. But ultimately, there's a lot of people who've been on these boards for a long time. They do a great job. It's perfectly fine. We don't need everybody to come in for a reappointment. But if there is a question or concern that you hear as alderman, or you just, hey, we haven't heard from John Stabile in 20 years, what's going on? Let's talk to him. We can have that discussion and we can ask them to come. But that was how we decided in the previous term how we would handle it. So open to discussion from all of you, but that is how I think would be the easiest way for us to handle it. And it allows everybody to have some real access to who is coming through for reappointments, and make some decisions based on that. Alderman Clements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I think that's an excellent idea. I think the list that you have, I think that Donna created is a great tool as well, for all of the aldermen to be able to use. And I think it makes a lot more sense that, you know, if an individual alderman has a question, or they have some, you know, they want to get to know an appointee better or something like that on a case-by-case basis, I think it's better, because we would be here, we would have to do more than once a month if we were to do every single reappointment to come in here. And, you know, and in some cases, it really isn't necessary, in my opinion. Now, if you have a different opinion, then you can email the chairman and we can, you know, have that person come, but hopefully it wouldn't be the whole, you know, everybody, every time. So I think that's a perfect way forward. In the past, that's what has been done. So it's really not veering to anything new either. So I think I agree with that. I think it's a good plan.
Great. Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I wholeheartedly agree with what Alderman Clemens just said. The point of the fact is that a previous board or previous, maybe even the same board, has already vetted them and felt that they were appropriate for that committee. For this committee to have to re-vet them is going to be a lot of work for you. The concern that I have, and I wish the chairs of those committees would speak out too, is often, as you pointed out, sometimes the person doesn't always show up. And that leaves a committee having to fight for quorum and so on, and in times that they can't meet. And I'm not trying to judge anybody for not coming to meetings. We don't know what happens in their personal life. They could be going through a period of time. They still want to be part of that committee, but for whatever reason. So the other point I want to make is, at least within my first term and so on, many of the committees had members that had expired. And we're just continuing on, and it wasn't coming to the personnel committee.
Yeah.
So I love this idea that you're going to have a list of who's on it, when their term is going to be expired, so you will see,
Yep.
hey, wait a minute, we haven't heard from the mayor's office. This is kind of like a second set of eyes. I love this idea.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you taking that extra step to do that. I think that's a great thing. It's a good checks and balance so that we don't go through what we went through. I remember speaking to someone and said, I think my term actually ended a year ago, and they were still continuing to do that. So I did. Personally, I don't know if that invalidates their vote or how that would be, or if it's just something that just automatically happens. But I think to the public, we had someone who came forward and said, you have all these unexpired terms. So I think it's not a good optic for the public. I think that there are legal reasons why we can continue that way, and they do get their voice without having to necessarily come to the personnel. But I think it's a better checks and balance, and it'll make the public feel that we're keeping an eye on everything. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And one of the things, the quorum thing is something that's come up a lot. And so I think that's when we're looking at longer terms, I think the other potential way at this is when I get the outline before you guys do, I can check with those chairs and just say, hey, how are things going? Are you getting quorum? Because Alderman Clemens had made the point earlier that we don't always know what's going on. I also would love to lean a little bit on our liaison. So if you're in a liaison to a committee, you're having issues with quorum, those types of things, please bring to me so that I can keep an eye on it as we have appointees come forward. And also, if it's a quorum issue and you don't have all your people seated, that's another way we can help, is make sure that you have enough people that if one or two people can't make it, that's not a quorum issue. Alderman Clee.
Thank you. This is not under your or under this committee's umbrella, but one of the things that I do find with our committees, and I don't put this even on the mayor's office because I know it's difficult to get people to volunteer, we don't always have the alternates filled, and the alternates are the ones that can fill in for quorum. So if you look, you'll see sometimes, and I'm talking to the public here, to go onto the city site and see where the vacancies are. And this might be a committee that you might be interested in, but we'll see a lot of vacant alternates. And I think that even if it got brought to this committee that there are these vacants, so that almost do a PBS kind of commercial saying, if you're interested in this, these are some of the vacancies. And that would help with quorum. So for instance, I'm not going to speak to any of them, but I'll use the example of where I know there are quite often vacancies in planning board in the ZBA. Their alternates have a tendency to be vacant and so on. So these are good backups, and there's a lot of interesting learning on those. I think they do want specific types of people's backgrounds and so on in those particular committees, which makes it a little harder for the general public. But even the historic district, I mentioned that there were times that we couldn't get quorum for the historic district as well. It's something that's very, very important committee, as you heard, and we need those bodies to be there. So I think trying to make sure that there's even alternates. Alternates are very important positions. So
Maybe we work through the list get the people seated and then go backwards and try to get some alternates in for exactly that point. The other thing that occurs to me that could be interesting is giving a little bit of support in when you get put on a committee, because, I mean, even in the Board of Aldermen, we didn't really know a whole lot about what was the way about it, so even if there's something we could, it doesn't even have to be a formal thing, it could be an email that's like, here's your committee, here's when it meets, if you're unable to attend, here's your alternates, so that they get a sense of what they're doing, because to your point, it's a volunteer board, and oftentimes people have very little understanding of what that means and what those kind of parameters mean in terms of having someone sub for you. Go ahead, Alderman Quigley.
Thank you, and it may be something that you've already discussed, but again, for the public at large that's listening to this, it might be beneficial to maybe have some of those chairs come to this committee and explain what they do, what their business is, and that might also give an appetite to the public as to wanting to possibly be on that board, whether it's the Conservation Commission, the Historic District. Right now, as I said, the people that are on the Historic District live in the Historic District. And I think it might have been Alderman Jetty at one point that said the Historic District, or it might have been Alderman Tebow, the Historic District belongs to the city. It does belong to the city. The people within that have a vested interest to make sure it's okay, but they're also the neighbors. And one of the things, even with me being the liaison in the Historic District, is I said sometimes I have to split the baby in half. I have to say no, my vote says no to one person and yes to another, which sometimes makes it difficult. And I think being on the Historic District and living in that district also can make it. So I would love to see someone outside the Historic District actually become a member on that committee. I'd almost like to make it a requirement, but it's a past type of a thing, just to get a new voice in there and so on, that, you know, so it's not all one optic. Again, it's just something that I've just kind of thrown out there, but I think if we let the public know what these committees are, I've had people all the time say to me, I'd love to be on a committee, what's opening? And I just point them to the city's website, and there's not a whole lot of explanation as to what the purview of this committee is. So I'm going to pick on the Historic District because I am the liaison, I've been the liaison for a long time. It's a committee that just says yes or no to what you're asking for falls within the lines, the land use codes. They still have to go sometimes to zoning, they still have to go to planning board, it's just one step for them.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea if people understood what that was, if they understood what the Conservation Commission was, or Downtown Improvement Committee was, and so on. They might want to be on that committee if they understood what their role was within the city. So much like what Alderman Lopez is doing with the Human Affairs, bringing people in to discuss what the benefits of these different departments are within the city. It might not be a bad idea, just throwing it out there.
I know we discussed it, I don't remember where we landed on it. Do you, Alderman Clemens?
I think we thought it was a good idea, and I do agree that it would be a nice thing to do. You know, particularly if there's a committee member or another alderman who has a question about a certain committee, or maybe it's somebody that we haven't heard from in a while. Like, obviously, I think we get a pretty good understanding of what's going on in the zoning board and the planning board and stuff like that, but there are some committees out there that, you know, it would be nice to hear more about what they do. And so, you know, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea.
Okay. I'm perfectly happy to send out an email and have the chairs of these committees come in. It might make sense to line them up with someone who, like, if the Historic District person had come tonight, given a quick overview, because we needed that anyways. Now, you know, Lisa has a little bit more sense of what she's signing up for. Alderman Senate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to piggyback on what everybody's saying here, I do think it would be really beneficial to the committee and to the commissions and the committees that we're trying to fill here to have the folks come in, not just to speak to what they do, but to give them the opportunity to speak to us and to speak to the public about what their needs are on the committee. I know during my time on the Downtown Improvement Committee, Mary Lou was racking her brain looking for a downtown resident to be on the committee because the downtown resident is part of the requirements for that committee. And, I mean, we have a lot of boards. It feels like it grows all the time. And to have a better understanding of what their specific needs are, I think would really help us reach out to our contacts, whether it's within our wards or just our professional networks, what have you, to, you know, potentially help track down these candidates who could fill out these roles. So I'd certainly like to hear from, I can already think of a punch list of a few I'd like to hear from.
Great. Alderman Clee.
Just to kind of add to that, I often get people who confuse the electric aggregation committee with the environment and energy committee. And I tell them they're two separate committees, they have two separate roles and so on. But I think to the general public, they just see, oh, they're both talking about energy. They don't see that they have two ultimate goals and two different aspects of it. So I think, again, the education process to the public is key in our committees. And it may come to the point where we say, well, wait a minute, isn't this committee, we've talked about that before when we were adding the Greeley Park Advisory Committee. You know, is that, do we really need this committee? I mean, truthfully, I think we do, but it hasn't even been filled yet. I know they're still working on it, but I think those are key talking points for all the aldermen, and I wish more aldermen would come to this, because these boards and these commissions and committees are very important. And I think this committee here does a phenomenal job in appointing that, but we could do a better job in educating, so.
Okay, great. So for a punch list for me, I'm looking at making sure Donna shares that sheet with everybody. As we have appointees, I will check in with the committee chairs, and then I'll start asking committee chairs if they can come in for 15-minute updates. I am just going to point out, potentially caveat, that sometimes, like, for example, Downtown Improvement Committee, their downtown businesses, like, during the day is pretty hard for them to get here, so we may not be as successful as possible, depending on, like, if they meet on a Friday morning and there are people who work at night. They are volunteers, but let's just go forward with it and see what comes up. But I know that we've definitely had that come up before. Like, I can't meet at noon because I actually own a business, right, on downtown. Alderman Jettie, go ahead.
Thank you. So this whole discussion kind of, brings up, I've got a lot of thoughts and they're probably disorganized, but I'll just spit them out as they come to me. So I realize that we as aldermen are, very, very busy, being aldermen. Most of us have other jobs besides being an alderman. And I know that before I became an alderman, I had no idea how much time it takes to do the job correctly, to read all the legislation that is proposed, to look at the laws and analyze things, ask questions, talk to the different people that work for the city full-time, about things. So, I know that, the five of us don't have a lot of time, but I'm thinking that, a lot of these committees, as I look through the list of committees, there are some committees, I don't even know if they still exist. I don't know if they don't have current minutes. They don't seem to have met currently. I don't know if they're still members on these committees. So it looks to me like, someone, needs to look at these things and whether they, these committees and whether they, whether we should be still carrying them on the list, number one. And then the committees that haven't, been meeting all that often, is there still a need for them? And then the committees that are having trouble with, their members, I think, I think what happens is that, one of the big problems I think we have is that not only are we busy, but, everybody out there is busy trying to, fulfill the requirements of their employment, fulfill the requirements of their family life, children, parents. It's everybody's got a lot on their plate. But the way that a city like Nashua works is it really depends upon people willing to volunteer their time to get involved. And maybe it would be good for, and again, I'm not looking at us, but maybe the mayor's office has people, I don't remember all their titles, but I think one of them is a public relations person. Maybe Madam Chairman, you'd be willing to talk to the mayor about, whether he has somebody that could take on the task of starting a recruiting campaign. Some kind of a public, campaign to tell people about the needs and, try to get people, try to instill in people a desire to contribute some of their time to making Nashua a better place. And, as has been pointed out, there are a whole bunch of different things that we have committees for, a whole bunch of openings, vacancies, and, most of these vacancies are positions that are appointed by the mayor, but the mayor doesn't necessarily, have to come up with these people himself. Anyone can suggest someone, anyone can let him know that they're interested in something. So I just think if someone more talented than me up in this area, like a marketing person, could. I'm not pointing at anyone. I'm just thinking out loud. Or somebody, not necessarily you, Madam Chairman, but someone, with your skills, someone else with your skills, would be willing to volunteer their time to come up with a campaign to get people enthusiastic about serving in some capacity in the city. And maybe we could generate more volunteers, higher caliber, not that the people we don't have, that's coming out wrong, but a good quality of people to serve on these committees. And while I'm speaking, it came up recently. We're not only the personnel committee, but we're the administrative affairs committee.
Mm.
So I'm wondering if part of the administrative affairs would include, the city's website.
Mm.
Because
That was the marketing person in me. Sorry, keep going.
because I don't pretend to be an expert on using computers, but the websites that I use all the time. I've been an alderman for 6 years now, so I'm used to dealing with the things that I deal with on the city website, and it's like I'm used to dealing with the state's website and the court's website, and New Hampshire Deeds.com. I mean, I go to these things and it's like muscle memory. I just know where to go and how to get to where I want to go because I've done it before. And the more you do it, you just kind of, without thinking about it, you just do it. But someone who isn't familiar, for example, it came up recently that, you know, tomorrow night, there's a meeting at the new Department of Public Works building on West Hollis Street, dealing with a study that's going on about the West Hollis Street corridor. And so they're inviting people to come to this meeting to express their concerns and you know, problems and ideas about how to improve the West Hollis Street corridor. And so I've been trying to get the word out that this meeting is happening, and people have you know, said to me, where can I get the information about this? And you know, so I asked the question of Public Works, you know, where is this information? And they said, well, just go to the website. Just go to the city website. So I said, fine, you know. So I went to the city website. I couldn't find any mention of this meeting. So I called them back, and I looked at the website. I don't see anything. I said, well, go to the Public Works page. So, okay, I go to the Public Works page. Still, no mention of this thing. And they said, well, you have to click on the engineering department. And then on the engineering department, there's another thing that you've got to click on, you know, projects, I think it's called. I may have the names wrong. But, you know, my point is that, you know, I'm an alderman. I've been dealing with the city website for a while now. You know, it was really difficult for me to find this stuff. And when I finally did find it, I found out there's no information available. So, anyway, and other people have said to me this similar stories about how they have, you know, it's really difficult for them to find anything on the city's website. And I was under the impression that we had our website looked at recently. I don't know, maybe it was 6 years ago, but it seems recent, and that improvements were suggested, but I'm not sure that we're there yet. And I think you know, maybe if it's within the purview of this committee, maybe we ought to have somebody from, I don't know if it's the IT department or if it's the administrative services director, you know, but somebody should, you know, somebody has to be in charge of this thing, and you know, maybe we need to encourage them to, you know, to have this looked at again, because, you know, telling people to go to the website to find out what positions are open, you know, good luck, you know. It's like, you know, you want to know what the laws are, go to the library. Okay, fine, you know. But, so, thank you.
I have many, many comments that I will not make back to that, but your point is taken around the website. I don't know if this committee has the purview to change it, but it definitely makes it hard for people to find things. Alderman Clee and then Alderman Clevens.
Actually, he's a member, so I will defer to Alderman Clevens first.
Thank you. Just quickly, I mean, it would come under it is an administrative affair, so the website would come under the jurisdiction of this committee, in the sense that if there was any legislation pertaining to it, it would come here. But in regards to the administration and operation of it, it's under the mayor. So any changes or anything like that would have to be, you know, we could suggest to the mayor what we would like to see. And we could suggest to the staff what we would like to see, but ultimately, any decisions or anything like that would have to be approved by the mayor ultimately. But I agree that the website needs some tweaking to it. I don't know I am not in any sense of the word, an IT person. I would be the last person you would want to ask about any of that, but I understand your frustration as far as like, you know, going through and navigating it. It should be a lot simpler than it is.
So, just to interject here, the problems that the two of you have brought up in terms of finding things is actually a user experience and user interface problem, which has nothing to do with IT. It's really, you bring in a consultant who goes through, looks at the flow and says, I'm Alderman Jettie, when I come to the homepage, I know I'm looking for agendas, blah, 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 so they put them on the homepage. And they make it easy, but they look at the flow, this is what I do literally in my day, and they make it so that it's easier to find. That's more of a strategic consultant than it is a technological issue. I remember when they did do this website, I made a point that I wanted our search to be better, because you can't find it, like you literally put in like Board of Aldermen agendas and like nothing would come up. I think that shift had been made, but there is a lot of things that leave, you know, things to be desired. But it's not an uncommon place to be, especially for a municipality, because the things that they have to communicate just keep growing and growing and growing, and they don't always have the person who's sitting there making sure that it's not all of a sudden becoming cumbersome, because now we're putting agendas over here, 4 clicks, but that kind of thing is something that you literally look at and you can map it out and say, well, it took me 8 clicks to find the thing you looked at. That's not great. But it's a totally different process from a standpoint of technology. Alderman Clee.
Madam Chairman, thank you. Everything you said is exactly the point that I wanted to make. As in a previous lifetime, I was an IT person, and I helped develop pages and so on. And my experience is going to be different from your experience. I'm constantly getting onto our city's website and just pulling that pull-down menu, which a lot of people don't even realize, where it says government, community, et cetera. You know, sometimes I would think something should be under government, but it's under community. So I find myself having to look for it. But because I have knowledge of understanding of how pull-down menus are, the more we put on the website, the more difficult it is to design to it, as you know yourself, and to do that. So if my interest is committees, I'm going to want a fast do that. So they put that. Not only do they have a pull down, but right on the top of the menu, they have GIS, they have agendas, they have all these different types of things that it keeps changing. As far as like the public notification of this particular meeting, I agree with you. I went looking for it myself and found it very difficult to find it, even though we had received an email on it. But the one thing that I would like to see, and this is probably not for this committee, it would be something that the maybe Public Works and so on. Anytime there's public notice, we talked about this when it came to public notice for permits and so on like that. They were going to be right on the page. When we have these types of meetings and so on, and we bury it within the department, people aren't going to find it. That doesn't make it user-friendly. So to that point, I am 100% in agreement that we should have an easy front page, whether it's a scrolling thing or something like that. We have the calendar, that's fine, but not everybody understands how to click in the calendar and so on. So I don't mean to say we dumb it down for anybody, but I'm just saying that, as you pointed out, the quick clicks are what happens. I think the city's done a really good job as far as trying to make that front page, because that's where people are going to start, from that front page. I think they've done a really good job considering all that. I think as far as the departments are concerned, for economic development, they have their own projects. Community development has their own projects. Public Works has their own projects. So how do you get all those on the front page? Maybe the only time you put it on the front page is if they've got something coming up within a week. Public hearings such as this. There are different things that are so on. So I don't think it's something for your committee to have to decide on, but I think as a Board of Aldermen, it may be just a suggestion, as I think Alderman Clemens had made, that we make to the mayor's office. I don't think Emily would have the time, getting back to committees, to to sit there and do all these public announcements for all these committees and so on, but I think this committee can educate the general public as to what each of the committees does, and when that presentation is happening, if there happens to be any vacancies, it can be brought on, and even at that, trying to find out what the committees are on the city's webpage, getting back to that, and where the vacancies are, that doesn't always get updated. So I would suggest that, the person managing that, which would probably be the mayor's office, does a better job at updating it. But again, that's, a conversation for another day. I think just starting by educating the public as to what these committees are and if there are any vacancies. And sometimes the vacancies are very specific. So planning board, zoning board, they want people with specific backgrounds.
Yeah.
And not just someone who has a grudge with the city and says, I didn't like the way this decision went, therefore I want to be on the planning board. That's not who should be on the planning board. It should be somebody with a background of real estate or, engineering or something of that nature. And I think that we do a good job in determining who should be on that committee, but I'll stop talking and I apologize.
Never apologize. I think that's the point of the committee work, is to talk through this stuff. And it's our first one of 2024, so this is the time to put this stuff out on the table. While we were talking, I clicked on public hearings from the homepage. It brings you to a page that just has a list of things that might have public hearings. And then when you click on that, it just brings you to a list of meetings. I'm gonna leave it there.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else from a perspective? I think I have a good list of what we're gonna do from here, but any other things for general discussion? Okay, do we have any remarks by Alderman? We just had lots of remarks. Great.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion? Alderman Clemmons.
Motion to adjourn.
The motion is to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are closing the meeting at 8:07 PM. Thank you, everyone.